Hello everyone, back tuning into today's second video. We're going to have a look at weather next week to 10 days. For today's second video, that's going to take us to around the 28th of September. We'll be able to extend out beyond that the extended GFS ensembles and also the extended GFS ensembles and also ECM ensembles. They all run to around a couple of weeks. We'll have a look at the CFSV2 at the end of the video. The next 4 weeks, that takes us well into October. Of course, we've just released a 5-day forecast. It's going to be a transitioning 5 days, so starting off with lots of high pressure, becoming more unsettled as we go along, and in fact, by the end of the 5-day forecast, in fact, it could be quite unsettled, and we'll pick up the storyline beyond that with today's second video update. So I'll get on with it for you right now. We're going to begin in the tropical Atlantic. Now, I want to begin over here across southern parts of Texas, where we have got this feature just here. That's Imelda. And that's tropical depression, Imelda. Yesterday, unexpectedly, that went up to a tropical storm. Now, when we did yesterday's video, the National Hurricane Center, you remember we had that yellow X in the Gulf of Mexico. The National Hurricane Center was only giving that a 10% chance of cyclone formation, but suddenly it became a tropical storm as it started to move onto that southern Gulf Coast of the United States. It became tropical storm Imelda. So that is the current position of Tropical Storm Imelda anyway, and the current details are that it's giving 30-mile-an-hour sustained winds with a central pressure of 1,007 millibars, and it's moving north at 5 miles an hour. If we click on Imelda and have a look at the that's Humberto, so let's go backwards and let's try and see if we can find Imelda. So there is Imelda. There's not a huge amount of detail about Imelda actually. Now that's a potential rainfall with the feature. If we can have a look at that, maybe we can't. So this is going very well, is it? There we go. So we've got some quite heavy rain just down here on this Gulf Coast, or near the Gulf Coast of Texas. And some of that will be taking us up to sort of 6 to 10 inches of rain, which is very significant, of course, in a short space of time. There's very little otherwise in terms of Imelda, in terms of detail, so we'll go backwards and we'll have a look at Jerry. So we now also have Tropical Storm Jerry just here. Let's have a look at what Jerry is doing. So currently giving maximum sustained winds of 45 miles an hour with a central pressure of 1,004 millibars, and it's moving westwards, northwestwards at 13 miles per hour. If we click on Jerry and see what Jerry is being forecast to do. So being forecast to go to Category 1 hurricane later in the week. At the moment, Tropical Storm Jerry is just here. It's forecast to move in that direction, heading towards the Caribbean by the time we get through to the end of the week as a Category 1 hurricane. And then getting close to the Bahamas, actually to the excuse me, to the east of the Bahamas, but not all that far from it. And obviously, by the time we're talking about the end of weekend into early next week, so by that time, there's going to be a lot of uncertainty anyway in the position of this feature. So, of course, the Bahamas very badly affected by the storm that we had a couple of weeks ago, Dorian. So, I think we'll have to keep an eye on where Jerry is going in the next few days. At the moment, this is being forecast to stay as a Category 1 hurricane, but of course it could develop. At one time, Dorian wasn't expected to be all that significant and severe. It finished up as a Category 5 hurricane, sat over top of the Bahamas. So, I think we'll have to keep a close eye on what Jerry is doing in the next few days. And then finally, if we go backwards again, and we've got Humberto just here. Hurricane Humberto is quite a bit further northwards in the tropical Atlantic. At the moment, Humberto is giving maximum sustained winds of 115 miles per hour. That takes us to Category 3 with Humberto, so that's a major hurricane. Got a central pressure of 951 millibars, and it's moving east-northeast at 16 miles per hour. If we have a look at what Humberto is forecast to do, so you see where we've got this white M in the black circle, that's telling us we've got a major hurricane. The current position of Humberto is just there. It's a major hurricane, Category 3. It's going to strengthen a little bit more over the next few hours. They're forecasting it to go to 120 miles per hour. I think that keeps it at Category 3. And then it heads up towards Bermuda as well over the next 24 or so hours, sitting in that sort of position as a major hurricane tomorrow. Gets downgraded to Category 2 and Category 1 later in the week. By the time we get through to the weekend, moving out into the North Atlantic as a post-tropical storm. So, very major feature, of course, at the moment, Humberto, and will likely be so for the next 24 hours or so. By the weekend, it should be going post-tropical as it moves out into cooler waters of the North Atlantic. It may have influences on our weather next week. It could turn things more unsettled, or help turn things more unsettled next week. These are the GFS upper air temperature and precipitation ensembles for Glasgow. Looking at Glasgow today. Bear in mind, these will be more unsettled compared to somewhere further southeastwards, but it's a fair reflection of the change of the weather that's on the way later in the weekend into next week. So, red line here is a 30-year upper air temperature average for Glasgow. We're warmer than average at the moment. Going to get even warmer over the next couple of days. Friday through to Saturday will be very warm down in the southeast, up to 25 degrees. This is all covered by the 5-day forecast, of course. Later in the weekend, temperatures drop, it turns cooler and fresher, and then next week into the closing days of September and the beginning days of October, looking generally quite a lot cooler then. The main change, however, is with precipitation. Notice it's more or less completely dry through to the weekend at Glasgow, and then all of a sudden these rainfall spikes reappearing, turning very wet across the southwest of Scotland, which of course is going to be one of the wettest places in the country, exposed to the Atlantic and to the Irish Sea. So, very wet through the course of next week and heading into the closing days of September and the first week, I suppose, of October. It won't be as wet as that across eastern, southeastern parts of the country, but even there, I think there is a prospect for some much needed and useful rain through the course of next week. So certainly the trend is to cooler and more unsettled conditions next week. Temperature anomalies from the 18th to the 26th of September, actually warmer than average. It is going to be relatively warm in the weekend. That's primarily down to what's happening over the weekend. We're going to have a very warm weekend, especially so on Saturday and Saturday night. As we get through to next week, it will start to turn cooler. So I'd expect these charts to begin to trend cooler, actually, in the next few days. Precipitation anomalies, still many parts of the country holding on just about to dry and average conditions, but these day by day are gradually trending less dry, if you see what I mean. So this is taking us from the 18th through to the 26th. So up to Saturday, most places are going to be dry, and then beyond that starts to get more unsettled. So these anomaly maps should be trending both cooler and wetter, I think, in the days ahead. That's how the GFS is looking for Saturday. Again, this is all covered by the 5-day forecast. We've got high pressure slipping away to the east by Saturday. So the high pressure is actually coming centred across eastern parts of Europe over here. Low pressure is developing out in the Atlantic. There's the remains of Humberto, by the way, just there. And, of course, the squeeze of the isobars between the high pressure to the east and the low pressure to the west is pulling the winds up from the south. So the air will be originating from southern Europe and Mediterranean on Saturday. Consequently, will be a very warm day. But this low pressure continues to break through from Saturday through to Sunday. That breaks down the high pressure. It starts to turn more unsettled, and then low pressure is beginning to take over the weather pattern. Remains of Humberto on Sunday, with that area of low pressure just there. Heading through to Monday, well, all of the low pressures in the Atlantic Form 1 feature, the central pressure of the low pressure is just there. That will contain the remains of Hurricane Humberto as well. And there's a fairly active weather system that's pushing in from the southwest, which will bring outbreaks of rain and then strong winds following along behind. So as we get through to Tuesday and to Wednesday, low pressure increasingly dominant through the course of next week, bringing showers or longer spells of rain. This is a proper breakdown, of course, of the high pressure. All of that high pressure that we've had for the past few days, weeks is gone. And we've got a 975 millibar area of low pressure sitting just to the west of Ireland. So obviously this is going to be much more unsettled. There'll be showers or longer spells of rain. And it's quite a lot cooler as well. The air around this low pressure is originating from up here somewhere, coming in with that area of low pressure, so temperatures will take a tumble, and it will just be much more autumnal, I think, through the course of next week. In the second half of next week, no real changes. This low pressure sits around the country, bringing further showers, if not longer spells of rain. Gradually, the jet stream is digging southwards as well, as we have got a little bit of heights rising actually to our north. So that's been to force this low pressure and the jet stream south. So if anything, next week probably sees the temperatures getting cooler and cooler. I would have thought we could be really very cool perhaps by the end of next week if this low pressure does indeed dive southwards through the country with the jet stream. By day 10, we've got low pressure to the east, high pressure is out to the southwest. We're pulling in winds from a chilly northerly direction. It will be starting to dry out by then. And then heading into more extended range, we begin to see high pressure trying to exert more of an influence from the Azores again into the opening days of October. That's how we look by the very end of the GFS run, which is Friday the 4th of October. So between areas of low pressure, we're trying to build this ridge from France northwards, but I think the Atlantic looks a little bit too buoyant for much to come of that. So I suspect this low pressure that we have just here will probably just roll in over top of any ridge attempt. It could be a relatively unsettled first week to October. This is the 5-day accumulated precipitation forecast from that particular GFS run at the Weather Outlook. Notice very little rain in the next 5 days. Will be a little bit. That's primarily down to what's happening on Saturday night to Sunday. So we'll be showery rain pushing across the country Saturday night to Sunday, but generally very little rain in the next 5 days. But look how things are forecast to be with a 10-day precipitation total, much more in way of precipitation. We're not talking about very wet conditions, but certainly much more rainfall between days 5 and 10 compared to what we've had over the past few weeks. So the trend is definitely there as we go into the closing days of September, or the final week of September, things to be much more unsettled. And we have been talking about this in the model output for quite some time. So the trends have been there within the model output for several days, if not a week or more, this last week of September to be more unsettled. So pretty good performance actually from the computer models, assuming, and I think it will, this unsettled spell for the last week of September comes off. This other GEM is looking for Saturday, warm southerly winds, high pressure drifting away to the east, low pressure out to west. So initially as the high pressure breaks down, what happens initially is that it turns very warm, but it is a sign that the high pressure is on the way out as we go through Sunday into Monday. Low pressure from the Atlantic breaks through. That looks probably wet and windy on Tuesday. That's Tuesday 24th of September. This low pressure out to west of Ireland does contain the remains of Hurricane Humberto, and it looks like we've got a spell of wet and windy weather crossing the country. And into the middle and second half of next week, looking rather unsettled too. But GM is actually building up a Scandinavian high, but it doesn't bring us anything particularly settled. We remain with this trough of low pressure up to day 10, which is Saturday the 28th of September. So it remains cool and showery into the closing days of the month. This is the ECM. So again, warm southerly winds on Saturday could lift temperature to 25 degrees in London on Saturday afternoon. That could well be the last 25. You never know with our weather, but that could well be the last 25 Celsius of this year. We shall have to see about that, of course. The low pressure main continues to slip away into Eastern Europe on Sunday. Low pressure is breaking through from the Atlantic and then into next week again. Looks increasingly unsettled. That's Tuesday, properly wet and windy. This area of low pressure just here contains the remains of Hurricane Humberto, and we're seeing wet and windy weather sweeping across many parts of the country through the early part of next week, and these unsettled conditions stay with us into the second half of next week as well. No real changes. There's some sort of tropical feature, maybe that's Jerry, I'm not sure. That could be the remains of Jerry just there heading into the North Atlantic as well as we get through to month's end. For us anyway, we're unsettled showers, if not longer spells of rain, and pretty cool as well. This is a big change that's being forecast by all models now for next week. This is the precipitation forecast from that ECM run from Tamecha. I haven't shown you this website and these maps for a very long time. That's indicative of how dry it's been for the past few weeks, of course. Starting with today, well, just a bit of patchy rain across northern Scotland today, otherwise mostly dry. Running through the next few days, basically, we're high and dry right way through to the weekend. But as we get through to the weekend, we do start to see on Saturday showers breaking out in the west. There might be a bit of thunder mixed in with that. I don't think it's going to be a particularly thundery breakdown, however. And then overnight, Saturday into Sunday, those showery bursts of rain pushing northwards and eastwards. So almost anywhere could get some rain on Saturday night. That'll be the first rain for several weeks across southern and southeastern parts of the country, of course. That pushes out of the way through the course of Sunday, but on Monday, here comes the next batch of wet weather. That's heading in from the Atlantic on Monday. That could give some quite wet weather across parts of England and Wales, if that's right, Monday through to Tuesday. And then another bout of rain coming in through the middle part of next week. That's another batch of wet weather heading in from off the Atlantic again. Once that clears through, we're into sort of showery conditions. So it's a case of showers, longer spells of rain moving up towards day 10. Definitely more unsettled next week, we can say that, with good agreement between many of these models now. These are the options that we've got on the table within the ECM ensembles for day 10, which is taking us to the 28th of September. So 32 members of the ECM ensembles looking unsettled, includes the control and the operational run. It's 62% of the ensemble suite. So very unsettled, below average heights, low pressure right over the top of the country, bringing in quite cool westerly winds as well. So those clearly are unsettled and autumnal at day 10. There's a minority option 19 that are still quite unsettled with below average heights out to the northwest. But they do have a little bit more ridging to the east, to the south, and also to the west. Probably still showery, even with those, and relatively cool, but they're not quite as unsettled with those 19 as the 32 that we have just there. In 2 weeks' time, however, this gets to the beginning of October, it does look as though the ECM ensembles are still trying to go back towards high pressure. We saw this when we did yesterday's update. So 13 members of the ECM ensembles raising heights to the south, pushing the low pressure and the jet stream to the north. So that's trying to build up high pressure from the south. 10 members of the ECM ensembles with a big ridge sitting just to our north. They're bringing in easterly winds, mostly dry with those, and probably not overly warm. 8 members of the ECM ensembles with high pressure right over top of the country for the beginning of October. And then we have got another 5. Again, these ones just here with high pressure sitting across the country. The 7 that we have there have high pressure to the north and a ridge extending through the country. A little bit weaker compared to these other options with the high pressure, but still relatively anticyclonic. And then there's just 8. It's a minority option. 8 to be unsettled for the beginning of October, with above average heights in the Atlantic going up to Greenland, and below average heights as a trough of low pressure sitting over top of the country. They are the most unsettled options, but there's only 8 of them, and it does look as though the ECM ensembles are trending back towards high pressure for the beginning of October. We shall see about that. Finally, this Albert CFS V2 is looking for the next 4 weeks. So these are 500 millibar heights broken down 2-week periods. The first week period will take us from the 18th to 24th of September. The coming week will be dominated by high pressure overall, above average height sitting over to the east country, but this high is drifting away to the east. The low pressure in the Atlantic is putting this high pressure under pressure, and eventually we know that by the time we get through to the end of the weekend, we have a breakdown taking place. This is week 2. It's the 25th of September to the 1st of October with low pressure out to the northwest. That looks more unsettled, particularly for northern and western parts of the country. Week 3 looks like that. It's quite a strange looking chart. So the above average heights then have collapsed into southern and eastern parts of Europe. There's some high pressure up here as well, so a little bit of northern blocking there from the 2nd to the 8th of October. Otherwise, no particular area of low pressure, but I suspect we would get a low filling in this white space just here. So actually that could be quite an unsettled start to October. And then week 4, which is the 9th to the 15th of October, also looking quite unsettled. Below average heights up to the north, some above average heights in central parts of Europe, generally westerly winds coming in. The southern areas probably reasonably dry, but in the north, I would have thought quite unsettled. So it definitely looks like big changes are ahead as we get through to next week. So been channeling this within the model output for quite some time. As I said earlier in the video, the models have performed well with this, I think, this breakdown of the high pressure for the last week of September. And it does look as though next week could be genuinely quite autumnal. How long that lasts, how long it is before we get ourselves back to high pressure remains to be seen. The ECM ensembles are definitely trending in that direction, but CFS always seems to be wanting to build up high pressure anyway. Could be this is going to be a more protracted spell of unsettled weather, though. We shall have to wait and see. But at the moment, it looks as though the odds are favouring autumnal conditions next week, with some much-needed and useful rainfall for the last week of September, and then maybe trending back towards high pressure as we get through to the beginning of October, but we shall see. We're back tomorrow with another week's 10-day video update. I think we'll look at the Beijing Climate Centre tomorrow for the next 40 days, possibly. So come back to that then. But that's all for now, and thanks for watching.